There's the extrovert, Naruto, the dark Sasuke, violent Sakura, white-haired Kakashi, and most importantly, the dominant power inside the main character, Kyuubi. Well, hello there, I'm Detroit. If you couldn't tell from the title, today I will be revisiting the character of Sukuna from Jujutsu Kaisen. I decided to do something I was always scared of doing and draw him as a Gundam-like giant mech suit of armor. First of all, let me address the intro to this video, before all the haters click away without liking the video and subscribing to my channel. I know Jujutsu Kaisen isn't Naruto. Naruto is my favorite manga and anime series. I've been reading it since I was 9 and I basically grew up with Naruto. Until the end of the manga, I was basically the same age as the characters. It sounds kinda strange to say, but Naruto is really important to me. For me, it is an incredible story with really good character designs, good plots, and relatively small plot holes despite the length of the entire story. So really, when I compare Jujutsu Kaisen to Naruto, Jujutsu Kaisen can take it as a compliment. While you watch me draw Sukuna as a giant mech, I will alternate between talking about the drawing process and talking about the anime, like the fanboy I am. I'm going to put time codes on the video if you want to skip to only the drawing process or only my take on this incredible anime, but I do encourage you to watch the entire thing, alright? I started sketching Sukuna before I recorded my screen. I used Jazza's construction pencil, which made the blue sketch. When I started recording, I decided to opt for a 3-part inking. Let me explain what it is. Maybe it has another name or maybe it doesn't have one, but that's how I call it, 3-part inking. First, I did the very rough sketch. It's almost a gesture drawing. I also tweaked the proportions on this part. The second part is another rough sketch, but a little bit refined compared to the blue one. This is where I define my main shapes, but also where I started to put details. For this part, you want to keep your canvas zoomed out to focus on the entire thing at once. That helped me decide where to put details or not, so that the drawing wouldn't be too crowded in one place or another. For a giant mech, the mechanical articulations in reality are very complex, so every joint on Sukuna's body was bound to have some level of detailing, like pivots, wires, washers. There needs to be some of them in there. In opposition, long pieces that wouldn't need rotation or intricate movements in a real robot, I decided to draw long metallic pieces of armor. The third part of my 3-part inking, after the rougher gesture sketch and the rough sketch, is of course the inking. You know what that is. I took a black, slightly textured brush and drew over all the previous lines, with some minor adjustments here and there. I really needed to find a way to express that it was Sukuna in the drawing and not any sort of robot. This is also why the pose is one that we've seen Sukuna take a dozen times in the anime, although never with 4 arms up until now. Talking about Sukuna, now it's fanboy time. I didn't really read Jujutsu Kaisen. I was looking for something to watch and I had this anime recommended to me. I tried it and boy, I was hooked from the beginning. I binge-watched the first 5 episodes and only then I realized that they were the only ones out yet. I had to watch patiently every week for new episodes until the end of the first season, like a month ago. Just for the animation, I have to say, kudos to the studio producing the anime. The animations are so good, so crisp and powerful. It is not fair to compare to Naruto at this point because the Naruto anime was so full of fillers and lacked budget. Also, there's like 10 years separating the two, so of course more recent animes would look better on screen. As for the story, well, it's a bit early to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen and I don't want to spoil anything to you. Let's say some bits are reminiscent of Naruto, but not too much. What struck me is the resemblance between Jujutsu Kaisen's beginning and the Xianxia novel. There's an MC with the slightest bit of backstory, but not too much. He accidentally finds some kind of treasure or powerful artifact, and for some reason, like eating it, he can't be separated from it. And now there's another person inside of him. It's very basic so far, but it works so well for something so simple. I mean, there's a reason all the Xianxia novels hook you up and you can't help but continue to read. Jujutsu is the same. And when you add the animation style and the colors and stuff, it just falls together perfectly. Another thing that falls together perfectly is this drawing in front of you. Okay, that's a bad transition. Anyway, for the drawing process. I was always a bit scared to try and draw a mech. It looks very fun to do and intricate enough to pique my interest, but for some reason I was always hesitant to try. Don't get me wrong, I love the looks of a Gundam-like robot, but there are so many different pieces and you have to make them work together in a sensical way. It's really not easy. You have to shape 3-dimensional blocks for every part of the robot. Perspective is hard to do, especially when the shape you're working with is not cubical and instead has a lot of diagonal lines and edges. What's more, you have to be perfectly symmetrical for it to make sense. The shapes have to read the same way on both legs, for example. My workaround for this was to make a lot of flat pieces of armor, like on the forearm, for example. It's much easier to represent a 2D plane in a 3D field. After that, you can add the third dimension on the 2D shape, making a thin armor rather than a burly block. I guess my Robo Sukuna is closer to a Bunraku from the Oko Chronicles than a Gundam. To still give the impression of working 3D, I added a lot of other simpler pieces, like holes on the chest piece and flat air vents on the legs, and the large bionicle feet that need to support the entire robot. And every joint has some sort of series of discs next to it, which are easy to draw in 3D. Conveniently, the joints were what I used to show Sukuna's black tattoos, making it look more like the character. I had a bit of trouble deciding on what to do for the hands of the robot. The hands look a bit basic to me, just cubes mashed together, but I looked at different references of Gundams and large mech suits, and honestly I couldn't find anything satisfying enough. Most of the hands I saw were weapons or simple cubes like I drew them, so I decided not to change anything. Drawing hands is hard, so if I have the opportunity to not do it twice and still have a good drawing, I'll take it. Inking the entire thing took a while. You can't easily correct a line, you have to erase it and draw again. It's okay though, inking is very therapeutic. It's relaxing. It's a very peaceful process where you don't have to think too much about what you're doing, simply mindlessly following the sketch underneath. Granted, for this drawing I had to zoom out and check for symmetry all the time. I had already decided to make similar limbs on both sides, so I had to check for where each line had to go in relation to the others. For example, the elbow piece, which is a tricky shape to rotate in your mind, or the lines on the forearm, the slanted ones. Depending on the angle of the arm and its side, it's really easy to mess up the orientation. In any case, it wasn't too much of a hassle when you look at the complete thing. All the lines are so small compared to the entire thing, I find it very satisfying to see the mess that is in there. And that makes for a good resolution should I ever try to print it on a poster. It is nice artwork in my opinion, and of a good anime that I like a lot. On the topic of Jujutsu Kaisen, there's one thing I want to mention. How good are the short animations at the end of the episodes, after the credits? The animation is much simpler and the short bits are really funny. I wish all animes had that. It forces you to watch the end credits, but it's a thing I'm willing to do for 30 more seconds of animation. And watching the credits is a way of showing respect to the creators and people who worked on it, even though they aren't watching me watching their names. I don't know, it's good karma. One time I was watching a really good movie and I watched the credits to find the name of the artist studio who rendered a few 3D things. So it's also good to discover people and then you can follow their art and draw inspiration from it. I haven't talked about the plot of Jujutsu Kaisen yet, I mean, not really. Without spoilers, of course. It's first episode stuff and the sort of things you find on synopsis without watching anyway. The plot of Jujutsu Kaisen is so full of cliches, but still original at the same time. You can find the same tropes as in many other great mangas, while still being somewhat original. The main character has a quick backstory and then finds himself unexpectedly in a strange situation. A demon is attacking his friends at school, because of course the main character, Yuji, is a high school student. To save his friends and his life, and possibly the life of the guy that has come to kill the demon, he swallows Sukuna's finger. Now, you have to understand, Sukuna is a demon with a reputation of being at least one of the strongest. He has 20 fingers and they have the power to attract demons and make them more powerful. When Yuji swallows Sukuna's finger, Sukuna becomes a part of him, much like Kyuubi with Naruto. Only Yuji has strong mental capacities and is able to control Sukuna, at least now when only a 20th of the demon is inside him. Following that, basically, Yuji demonstrates that he is able to control Sukuna and Goju Satoru decides to use him. Because Yuji is too dangerous in case Sukuna gets free, he needs to be eliminated. But Sukuna's fingers can't be destroyed, so the better option is to allow Yuji to live and assimilate as many of the fingers as he can. Then, when he has eaten as many fingers as possible, they would kill him, thus destroying forever all the parts of Sukuna he had in him. This is how the high school students get enrolled in a magical school focused on finding and killing demons. He is now a Jujutsu sorcerer. That's basically the first episode. Then, he makes friends and battles demons with magic and stuff, all the while keeping Sukuna inside of him. Every time he talks to Sukuna, or the other way around, we get a glimpse of the inside of his mind. In a dark red and bloody cave, atop a pile of bones, is Sukuna. Sukuna has Yuji's face, and black tattoos that also cover Yuji when the demon takes over his host. Most often, Sukuna is seen sitting down or laying lazily on his side. This is the sort of pose I wanted for my Robo Sukuna. Flames, blood, dark colors, my color palette was easy enough to find. I knew I wanted my background to be very dark, so instead of going for darker reds, I used slightly lighter ones that I desaturated a bit. The entire image would be relatively dark, but at least you could still make out the character from the background. While still zoomed out, I roughly chose on where I wanted the colors to go for a good reading of the image. In a simple but tedious process, I then filled every part of Sukuna's body with a proper color. Joints in a dark grey, almost blue. Main armor pieces in bright red. More metallic parts in a very desaturated pink, and secondary metal plates in another shade of red/pink. Yuji's and Sukuna's hair is pink, so I tried to find a shade that would fit both the original character and the dark robot version. The colored version of Sukuna was fine, but for a more interesting drawing I had to add a source of light, of course. Light is what allows our eyes to see. Whenever you're looking at something, anything, it's because there's light. Light is one of the most important aspects of art. At this point my picture was very dark and all in tones of red. Because of that, I chose a complementary color for the light, a bright blue, almost cyan, that would complement the shape well. For a bit of mystery concerning the character, I didn't put the light head on, rather opting for the side. I wanted to emulate a very diffused light, soft but bright. I made it especially soft on the ground under Sukuna's feet, because I wanted to keep the attention away from it and onto the character. Because Robo Sukuna is a robot, I imagine he's all metal, so it's okay for him to be more reflective than the ground and brighter. Once I had put down the blue light, I stopped my recording on the screen, because I was mostly done. That's the extent of the process you're going to see, although I did come back to it the next day. With a fresh eye, I did some tweaking and minor changes, but I didn't record it. I shaded the character a bit more and added red lights. Because he's a mech, Sukuna has glowing parts like LEDs inside him. Especially his 4 eyes. I turned them into lights to add to the impression of a mechanical creature. And that is where I ended the drawing. Before we discover the final drawing together, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel for more drawings every week. I'll have a playlist of my digital drawings at the end of the video. I also have ink on paper drawing videos, which I release every Thursday. If you like today's video, well, you can click the like button and comment underneath with your impressions. Here is my Sukuna Gundam. That was Detroit. Have a nice day and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!